The Philadelphia Eagles just extended head coach Nick Sirianni's contract for multiple seasons. So coming up on today's edition of Locked On Eagles, I'm going to make the case for Sirianni as the greatest Eagles head coach of all time.
You are Locked On Eagles, your daily Philadelphia Eagles podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
We thank you so much for making Locked On Eagles your first listen each and every day. Welcome in, Eagles fans, to this Monday edition of the show. I'm your host, as always, Louis DiBiase, coming at you with 5 shows a week, Monday through Friday, right here on the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Some breaking news on what I thought was going to be a slow news day, May 19th. We are officially in the dead zone of the 2025 NFL offseason, but the Philadelphia Eagles extended head coach Nick Sirianni's contract today for multiple seasons. Not surprising after winning Super Bowl 59, but a much-needed move to make sure the Eagles head coach is locked up for the future. And although I've always had a rocky relationship with Nick from afar, right, just based on my feelings about who he is as a head coach, you know, if everybody remembers my recap show last year after the Week 4 matchup against the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, I wanted him fired in 2023 when it didn't work with Sean Desai and Brian Johnson. I wanted a head coach potentially that offseason to replace him that does call plays. So, you know, based on some personal preferences I have with coaches, based on that rocky end of 2023 and a rocky start to 2024, I haven't always been the biggest fan of Nick Sirianni. But at the same time, the longer things go, the more evidence we are provided one way or another, I'm willing to admit when I was wrong, and I was absolutely wrong about Nick Sirianni. Not only should he be the Eagles head coach for the future, I think he might be already considered the greatest Eagles head coach of all time, right? If you just think about it from an accomplishment perspective, Nick Sirianni already has a Super Bowl ring. The only other head coach in Eagles history that has that is Doug Pederson. I think Sirianni has already surpassed what Pederson did because he's made it to 2 different Super Bowls. They've made the playoffs every single year he's been the head coach since 2021. And not like Doug Pederson's playoffs in 2018, 2019, where they barely make it in, maybe get a wild card win, but they're not real contenders. Like, no, ever since Nick Sirianni took over in 2021, pretty much every single year, the Eagles have been a Super Bowl contender. So I think he's ahead of Doug Pederson. Andy Reid has the longevity, right? He's maybe the greatest play caller in NFL history. He led you to, 5 different NFC championships. He led you to a Super Bowl. And while I prefer a head coach like Andy Reid, Nick Sirianni is a better head coach in Eagles history because he got it done. He's been to 2 Super Bowls, whereas Andy Reid has only been to 1, and he actually got it done. He got a ring, and, oh, by the way, he beat Andy Reid to win a Lombardi trophy. So from a longevity perspective, he has Doug Pederson beat. From a ring perspective and Super Bowl appearances, he has Andy Reid beat. I think he has Dick Vermeil beat as well. Again, I prefer certain things in a head coach that Nick Sirianni hasn't always been great at, but at the same time, he's been proven to be the perfect head coach for Philadelphia. He's the perfect head coach for a young roster. The way that he dictates the culture, the way that he is so much better from a player development side of things compared to Doug Pederson, compared to Andy Reid. Like, that was a strength of Sirianni's coming into Philadelphia. It was a big reason they brought him in 2021, was that he was better with younger players. He was better at getting the most out of young players and developing them compared to Doug. And they knew they were going to go with a younger roster. So he was the exact coach to get the most out of what last year was the youngest defense in football, and they've been a very young offensive core growing up together since Sirianni took over in 2021. And when you look at it from that lens, name me a young player that has regressed in the Nick Sirianni era. Every year, it feels like these young Eagles have gotten better and better and better. Even the ones that haven't become stars have gradually improved to be solid starters, and at worst case scenario, they're pretty good role players in a rotation. So I think Nick Sirianni's better than Doug Pederson and Andy Reid in that way. And again, Sirianni, you can't really quantify what he does as well as some of these other coaches, because what he does well has a lot to do with leadership and with culture, and you can't really find numbers for that kind of stuff. You can't really watch the tape and see that kind of stuff. But the thing that's most important about head coaches that you can quantify is wins and losses. And Nick Sirianni, not only is he better than Andy Reid and Doug Pederson in that way, in a wins and losses perspective, but he's up there with the greatest of all time when it comes to winning percentage. NFL head coaches ranked by all-time winning percentage. Nick Sirianni is 5th. The only coaches ahead of him, Guy Chamberlain, John Madden, Vince Lombardi. Ever heard of those names? George Allen. Nick Sirianni has the 5th highest win percentage in NFL history. His first 3 years as the Eagles head coach, that was the second most wins in a head coach's first 3 years in the history of football. Only George Seifert of the San Francisco 49ers had more. So, again, I've had my run-ins with Sirianni. I do think that the collapse in 2023 was very alarming. In 2024, it was very concerning, that 2-2 start. But he proved to be the right guy to turn that around. Like, he learned from that collapse in 2023. He never lost the locker room like some people thought he would. Some people speculated that he did. He always had that locker room, and that's why they were able to overcome that 2-2 start despite the collapse of the year before, because everybody had Sirianni's back. And it's because he always has their back. He is such a good players coach, and that's also what I loved about Doug Pederson as well. Like, I'll say what I want about Sirianni not being able to call plays, but I have always wanted a player-friendly coach, and that is who Nick is. Like, just look at, after the game against Tampa Bay, the bye week, Lane Johnson, Jordan Mailata, Landon Dickerson, Cam Jurgens walk into his office and say, we're not happy with the way this offense is operating. We are too pass heavy. We have Saquon Barkley in the backfield and an elite offensive line. We're 2-2. We just got blown out by Tampa Bay. If we're going to turn this thing around, coach, we need to be a run-heavy, run-first offense. There's a lot of head coaches in football, a lot of past head coaches in Eagles history, Chip Kelly, that would have said, thanks for your input. I'm the head coach. I'll say what's best for this football team. But Sirianni's biggest strength is his ability to dictate a culture where players have the power. Players are comfortable enough to go to their head coach in the locker room, in his office, and say, here's what we need to do. And he actually listens to them. And that ability to listen to his players led to a Super Bowl win. I think Nick Sirianni is the most underrated part of that championship season. He is still not given enough credit for that decision after the Tampa Bay game to run the offense through Saquon Barkley, because the first 4 games of the year, they were still as pass-heavy as they were in 2023 and 2022, and it wasn't good enough. And Sirianni said, we're going to run the football, and you don't win a Super Bowl without that. Like, that was such a massive moment in Eagles history, was that meeting. And Nick taking that in stride, using that as constructive criticism and turning this team around, starting with that Cleveland game, that changed the season. That, you won a Super Bowl in large part because of that moment. So I think this was a no-brainer for him to be the long-term head coach. Now, again, I still wonder with new coordinators all the time. Kevin Patullo is the play caller. Is there always going to be some ups and downs on the offense? I'm very curious about that with Sirianni's future. I'm curious with more success and power that he gets as the years go on, how his dynamic will change potentially with Howie Roseman, kind of like it did with Doug Pederson. But knowing Nick, maybe it won't change. He truly is this selfless guy that will always just be willing to have this kind of role as the head coach CEO and won't want more power. Maybe that's the case, but I'm curious how the future is going to look. But no matter what, it was the smart move to build your future around Nick Sirianni as the Philadelphia Eagles head coach, because as much as I've doubted him at times, I think from an accomplishment perspective, as I said before, he's already the greatest head coach in Eagles history. And that's saying a lot considering he's only been here since 2021. I think it's one of the most underrated runs a head coach has had in the history of this league. He just does not get the credit that some of these other head coaches do, right? Even guys of his style, like a John Harbaugh, Dan Campbell, gets so much more credit than Nick Sirianni, and Sirianni's had way more success than Dan Campbell since 2021. So he's vastly underrated. I think he's the GOAT already for Eagles head coaches, and a much-deserved contract extension for the head coach. All right, guys, coming up next right here on the Locked On Eagles podcast, we start our player profile series. We're going to be locked on Moro Ojomo today. I want to talk about why I'm confident he could be just as good as Milton Williams in 2025, if not better, Let's get into that coming up next right here on the Locked On Eagles podcast. All right, guys, today's episode of the Locked On Eagles podcast, we are brought to you by Skylight Calendar. Say goodbye to sticky notes, scribbled plans on the fridge, and overlapping calendar invites. The Skylight Calendar is here to bring clarity to the chaos and help families stay organized without all the stress. This sleek digital display syncs with your existing calendars, Google, Apple, Outlook, and more, making it simple to track appointments, practices, dinners, and reminders all in one easy-to-see place. What would it mean to eliminate the I didn't know excuse from your family's routine? Could assigning everyone their own color finally solve the who does what confusion in your household? Right now, Skylight, they're offering you on their calendars $30 off their 15-inch calendars by going to skylightcal.com/NFL. Go to skylightcal.com/NFL for $30 off your 15-inch calendar. That's Skylight, SKYLIGHT, Cal, CAL.com/NFL. All right, thanks as always for making Locked On Eagles your first listen each and every day. Kicking off another week of shows. Nick Sirianni extended by the Philadelphia Eagles today to a multi-year deal. Not sure of the term or the money. Jeffrey Lurie is very tight-lipped when it comes to the contract details of his coaches and his GM. I mean, Howie Roseman, I think, basically has a lifetime contract with this team, as he should. No idea how much money he makes or how long the deal is, and that's kind of the case right now with Nick Sirianni. If more details do come out, of course, we'll keep you updated on the podcast. But let's start our player profile series that we're going to do now for a couple weeks, where we really zoom in on some of these important Eagles that are stepping up into bigger roles in 2025. And I do want to start this series today with a player that I've always been fascinated with since he was drafted by the Eagles, day 3, 7th round out of the University of Texas. It's defensive tackle Moro Ojomo. And I think the Eagles, as well as I do, they have huge expectations for Moro Ojomo. And I honestly believe Moro Ojomo is going to be the biggest breakout star on the Eagles roster in 2025. I know that Milton Williams was incredible in 2024. He was the best from a efficiency standpoint, from, pass rush win rate to overall pass rushing grades on Pro Football Focus. Milton Williams was the best one-on-one pass rusher on the interior in the entire NFL. So Moro Ojomo has huge shoes to fill. But I think, and I'm not predicting he's going to be the number 1 ranked guy this year next to Jalen Carter, and he's instantly going to be 2024 Milton Williams. But I do think after watching him last year, this week I went back and watched a lot of his tape when he also had those one-on-one mismatches, thanks to Jalen Carter just taking all the attention off of the next guy's shoulders right next to him. Ojomo took advantage of those matchups almost as well as Milton Williams did. Like, he kind of flashed that same elite efficiency as Milton Williams. So if you did tell me that he went out there and was as good as 2024 Milton Williams, like, I'm not predicting it, but I wouldn't be surprised. Like, he did flash top 10 potential as a pass rushing defensive tackle. And I do think, again, from those metrics, from a pass rush win rate standpoint, sacks, overall pass rushing grade, I do think when it's all said and done, he'll be a top 10 pass rusher, again, from a numbers side of things, for defensive tackles in 2025. And a lot of that, again, the credit should go to Moro Ojomo, or I should say Jalen Carter. But Moro Ojomo, I think, is a special player. There was no reason he was a 7th-round pick in 2023. He had no business being that late of a pick outside of maybe some injury concerns. I thought he was a 3rd-round prospect. I wanted the Eagles to draft him on day 2 that year. The fact that they stole him at the end of day 3 is unbelievable. So I think he can be that guy. And his numbers last year, again, Milton Williams was like number 1 in all these categories, but look at Moro Ojomo's numbers from 2024. He was actually the 2nd highest defensive tackle in pass rush win rate, only behind Chiefs legend Chris Jones. So he actually had a higher pass rush win rate than Milton Williams. And of course, sample size has a lot to do with this. The less pass rush snaps, of course, the percentage is going to be easier to be higher in that win rate when you're playing fewer snaps. But number 2 overall, only behind Chris Jones, is unbelievable. According to Pro Football Focus, Milton Williams was the number 1 ranked pass rusher on the interior. Moro Ojomo wasn't that far behind. He had the 6th highest overall pass rush grade for defensive tackles, according to PFF. He had 5 quarterback hits. Like, I think he can be that guy. And I think the Eagles think he's going to be too, because they didn't go out there and re-sign Milton Williams. They didn't go out there and throw big money at, another defensive tackle. Like, I like Tarshawn Wharton from the Chiefs that ended up signing a pretty solid deal with the Carolina Panthers. They didn't go out there and do that. They didn't trade for any veteran. They didn't go out there and draft a defensive tackle in the first 3 rounds. They brought in Ty Robinson out of Nebraska in the 4th round on day 3. I like Ty Robinson. Had 7 sacks last year with Nebraska. He is also a pass rush specialist on the inside. I think he'll be a good part of this rotation behind Carter, Ojomo, and Jordan Davis. But I don't think anybody thinks Robinson's coming in from day 1 and he's going to be the man next to Jalen Carter. So the Eagles, based on their actions alone, showed you their confidence in Moro Ojomo to fill the shoes of Milton Williams. I think, honestly, as I mentioned before, he could take the biggest leap of anybody on this roster. When it comes to a player right now that's a solid starter or a strong rotational role player, of any of the players that could potentially go from that guy to a star in 2025, to an elite player at his position, one of the breakout players of the year across the NFL, not just on the Eagles, but in the entire league. I think Moro Ojomo, again, my take of the day is that Moro Ojomo will be the biggest breakout star on the Eagles of any of those players, over a Jalix Hunt, over a Keely Ringo, over any of the rookies, Will Campbell, Andrew Makuba, Tyler Steen on offense, whoever you think could be that breakout player. I think Moro Ojomo has the best chance to go from a role player to a star in just 1 year. And a lot of that, again, has to do with Jalen Carter, though. The Jalen Carter effect is real. And he's only going to command, after the season Carter had last year, especially in the playoffs, he's only going to command more attention this year. And especially with Milton Williams gone, they're going to kind of overlook Ojomo probably and say, hey, we need to focus even more now on number 98. With number 93 gone, it's all on Jalen Carter's shoulders. Let's double team this guy. Let's triple team this kid. That's going to allow Moro Ojomo to have some really, really strong one-on-one looks. And I think he's going to take advantage of it. I really do. I think he's my breakout player of the year for the Eagles. Let's continue to get into Moro Ojomo's potential in 2025. What should we predict for Moro from a numbers perspective? Like, how many sacks is he going to get? What's our confidence meter in him replacing Milton Williams? In him going from a rotational piece to a starter? Because that's not always easy. We'll get into that coming up next as we wrap up this Monday edition of the Locked On Eagles podcast. All right, guys, we're wrapping up this Monday edition of the Locked On Eagles podcast, starting up our player profile series. We are locked on Moro Ojomo today on the Locked On Eagles podcast. I think he is going to be the Eagles' breakout star of 2025. I think they're as confident in him, and their actions show that. Like I said, they did not go out there and re-sign Milton Williams. The biggest investment they made at defensive tackle was picking up the 5th-year option of Jordan Davis. It was drafting Ty Robinson in the 4th round. And again, I like Robinson. I think he has a legitimate role. I think he could be last year's version of Moro Ojomo, where he's like the 4th guy in the rotation, and you're saying he consistently gets to the quarterback. But I think Moro Ojomo, going back and watching his 2024 tape this week, I think he can be a star. Like, yes, a lot of this, again, has to do with Jalen Carter and the attention that he seeks, that he commands, that he just gravitates towards, and that allows the player next to him to thrive. A lot of that should go to the credit of number 98. But Moro Ojomo is a talented player. As a pass rush specialist, he's got an array of rush moves that he can win with. Speed to power moves, swim moves, like just bull rush. Moro Ojomo stunts, like getting to the edge. He has speed. He has pretty good bend. He's a little bit of an undersized defensive tackle, but I think this is the perfect guy to replace Jalen Carter, or I should say Milton Williams next to Jalen Carter. And his numbers last year don't do anything justice. I mean, his basic box score stats, 20 tackles, 5 quarterback hits in the regular season, 0 sacks, that's kind of whatever. But again, when you zoom in and look at his advanced metrics, had the 2nd highest pass rush win rate of anybody outside of Chris Jones at his position. PFF had him as the number 6th overall pass rushing defensive tackle. He had 5 quarterback hits. And also, He's a good run stopper. I believe he was, let me see here. I had the numbers. Yeah, he had the higher run defense grade compared to the other big three in this rotation last year. He had a higher run defense grade than Jalen Carter and Milton Williams. He didn't have a higher grade than Jordan Davis. Of course, that's Jordan Davis's bread and butter, but he can be, if he's not just a pass rush win rate specialist, like he can also stop the run. And so, I don't know. I think he's going to be a legit player. And the cool thing is, too, the exciting part about Ojomo's development, he got better as the year went on. He didn't hit any like redshirt rookie wall because in 2023, he was a rookie, but he was dominating in the preseason, then suffered a neck injury that kept him out for the majority of the year. This 2024 was basically his rookie year, and I thought he got better as the year went on. And so did the Eagles. Like they trusted him in the playoffs. In that game against the Rams, the final drive of the game, Matt Stafford's driving down the field. That had to have it third down sacked by Jalen Carter. You know who was next to him on the field? It wasn't Milton Williams. It wasn't Jordan Davis. It was Moro Ojomo. Like, he was playing in huge moments last year. He actually had a sack in that game in the divisional round against the Rams. His first career sack came in the postseason. He had a big tackle for a loss against the run in Super Bowl 59 against Kansas City. So if we're talking about like my confidence meter in Moro Ojomo taking a step up this year, at least like being a strong rotational piece still, a really good starter, my confidence in Moro Ojomo is a 9 out of 10. My confidence in him going from a rotational piece, a highly efficient one, to a star, I would say right now out of 10, it's like 7.5, 8 out of 10. If you told me next year Ojomo has more sacks than Williams had in 2024, if he has like 5 or 6 sacks next to Jalen Carter, I wouldn't be surprised. My overall like predictions for his numbers, I think he's going to be number 2 at this position in snaps. I think he will be ahead of Jordan Davis in snaps. He'll be ahead of Ty Robinson in snaps. I think you can look at him getting like 4.5 to 5.5 sacks. I think he will replicate Milton Williams' sack total from last year. Again, I don't know if he's going to be the number 1 overall graded pass rusher like Milton Williams was, but Moro Ojomo was number 6 last year. So if he's top 5 this year, would I be surprised at all? Top 3? No, and I think he'll be top 10 again at least. And considering you're saving 25, what did Milton Williams get? $26 million a year from New England. Considering you're paying Moro Ojomo a day 3 rookie contract compared to $26 million a year, and you're still getting even if it's instead of number 1, it's number 4 or number 6 or number 8, an overall pass rushing defensive tackle. The fact that you're getting that for like $24 million less a year that's why they let Milton Williams go. And you can understand that logic. As good of a player as he was, and Milton was homegrown talent, who was instrumental in that Super Bowl win, Ojomo is a reason that they had to let Milton go. He's too efficient of a player at such a cheaper cost to justify paying almost $30 million a year to Milton, especially when you know you got to pay Jalen Carter $40+ million a year next offseason. So I think it was a no-brainer, and I think Moro is going to be that guy. Interestingly enough, though, the Eagles could end up with Moro in a similar situation next offseason that they were this past year with Milton Williams. Like, he only has 1 year left on that rookie deal. So, he's not a pending free agent. He will be with the Eagles in 2026 as well. But then he's a free agent, unrestricted. And if he dominates as much as Milton did next to Carter, he'll probably end up cashing in. And the Eagles, they might have to just do defensive tackle by committee, like rinse and repeat, replace next to Jalen Carter, because they can't afford these guys. Jalen Carter might end up just getting everybody paid every single year, and you're going to have to pay him $40 million a year. So you can't really justify investing $80+ million a year in 2 players at this position. So Ojomo has an opportunity actually to get a similar bag as Milton Williams in like a year and a half. It's a huge year for Moro. That might just be the constant cycle of life, though, in this position next to Jalen Carter. But I think for this year and next year, the Eagles are getting a breakout star. I really do think Ojomo is going to be a stud in 2025. And he already kind of had I don't want to say this is going to be his breakout season, because he already kind of had a mini breakout last year. But I think there's another step. There's another gear in his game has a whole offseason now to continue to develop. Year 2 on the football field, year 2 in Vic Fangio's scheme. This time you're the guy. You're going to be the unquestioned starter next to Carter, that in obvious pass rushing situations, you're the man. I think a breakout season's coming, and I'm very excited for a former my guy in the 2023 NFL Draft. Tomorrow, I'm going to be locked on Jalen Hunt, another breakout star I think is going to have a big year on the Eagles defensive line in 2025. We will dive into Jalen Hunt's game coming up on tomorrow's edition of the show, but that's going to do it for today's Locked On Eagles. Thanks so much for making us your first listen each and every day. We'll see you tomorrow. As always, thanks so much for downloading, watching, and listening, and let's go Birds. Fly, Eagles, fly.